Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 98. I am delighted today to be joined by Tom Noon, strength conditioning and rehab coach. Tom, how's things?
Good, mate. How are you, Ben?
I'm good, thanks, mate. We've had another good discussion. I mentioned on the the recent even podcast that every time I speak to a guest before we start recording, there's always loads of value in it. And we've just done the same thing and I've not recorded it. So now we have to live up to that quality conversation. That's it. We set the standards high. So take us through. I know you've got plenty going on, Tom. Plenty of different roles and things that you're working on at the moment. So do you want to just take us back to start with on your education and then take us through to what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, of course, Ben. I guess if I start day one, I've obviously just gone down this sort of conventional route of most sort of S&Cs and sports sciences these days. So I did my undergrad in sports science at Liverpool John Moores. During that time, obviously that's a 3-year course. I tried my hardest to try and get like some internships and experiences, etc. I was quite fortunate. I managed to get a few decent roles there. I managed to get roughly a whole season at Oldham Athletic. I think that was in year 2 during my undergrad, which was good. I had some short sort of experiences within football. Nike Academy at the time, who I know have disbanded now, but that was an excellent experience. Then going into sort of year 3 or the final year of my undergrad, I managed to get John Moores themselves have like an S&C department. So I sort of got a bit of an internship in there working with the student athletes, etc. So that was great. Finished uni and then literally went straight into my master's. So I stayed on at John Moores and I did a master's in sport and exercise physiology, which is probably a little bit unconventional, to be honest. I didn't do the S&C route. The master's was very sort of the cellular mechanisms of exercise adaptation. It was a bit geeky, to be honest. It was very going down the PhD route. That kind of wasn't my interest, but I was massively interested in the adaptations that sort of underpin health and performance. So that education was massive for me. During my master's, I managed to get a fantastic job as a PT. So that was working out of a private personal training facility in Liverpool at the time. And that was sort of my first real exposure to, here you are, Tom, you're in the big wide world and you're sort of coaching people. But that was great, because it gave me people skills and the ability to really understand that everyone's different. Not the same way you teach a squat for X is not going to work for B, etc. and all those sort of things. So I'd definitely encourage anyone to go down the PT route if they haven't already. And then actually it's funny, so I know I'll go into my rehab sort of experience in a little bit, but my rehab interest actually started during that job. So in the PT studio, they had a physio that worked kind of on site as well. He'd rent a little space there. I got quite pally with him, and he'd obviously bring his clients into the gym and they'd go through like whatever they needed with him. And I started to pay a big interest in what he did with them and that sort of hands-on, cute, delicate rehab. And then eventually he started to kind of push them towards me. So once he felt they were at a certain level, this was typically running athletes or people with anterior knee pains, general population, etc. And then he started to push one to me, which was really good. So he gave me a little bit of extra sort of real hands-on rehab experience, and that really resonated with me, and I loved it. I gained a massive personal interest in rehab. When I finished that job, I actually got a job in Ireland. So there's a place in Ireland called the Sports Surgery Clinic. Now what they are is they're essentially an orthopedic hospital, but they specialise in sports injuries. So over in Ireland, you obviously have the GAA. That's massive Gaelic Football Association. They have 3 main sports, which are hurling, camogie, if I've got that name right, and Gaelic football, essentially. They're just massive on sports in Ireland, and they're really multi-directional, high-intense sports. So they get a plethora of lower limb injuries, ACLs being a massive one. So as a clinic, they're a massive business, but they're very forward thinking in what they do. So they employed me as an S&C, and they're a massive clinic who they house probably, I think now they've got about 12 strength and conditioning coaches full time. I think they've got 18 to 20 physiotherapists, and they've actually got or I think they are the only clinic in Europe who utilise a biomechanics lab in daily practice, as opposed to research within the university. So they also employ 5, 6, 7, 8 biomechanics people as well. So that was fantastic. I got such exposure to different practitioners and different ways of thinking. And it just, like that was definitely the kind of pivotal point in my career, I feel, where I started to really change my coaching philosophy. We'll probably delve into that a little bit more later. But then I actually had a baby, and the baby's mum and they weren't living in Ireland, so I eventually had to leave that role. I was there for about 16 months. Then when I came back, I got a job with a company called Game Changer Performance, who I'd kind of worked for very briefly when they first set up a few years prior. But when I came back, they'd been, I think, 3 years based at St. George's Park. And what they do there is they again specialise in rehab. So if you're a member of the PFA, what the PFA will do is they'll provide, if you get injured, they'll provide a service for you where you can go spend some time at SGP and have like an intensive week or 2 weeks rehabilitation. And that's obviously working with male and female footballers, so it's very football specific. But obviously the rehab background that I'd had in Ireland, working with many different multi-directional field sports athletes, gave me a good sort of stepping stone towards that role. And then when I came back, I basically walked straight into the job, and it was fantastic. And I was there for roughly a year. And then now I work full time with Port Vale Football Club, where I lead their strength and conditioning for the first team. I've been in that job about 7 months now, so I've probably been there 3 months. And then we obviously had COVID-19, which was a bit of a strange situation, but it is what it is. And that's going well. I'm enjoying it. Obviously looking forward to kind of being there fresh now and having a full pre-season to sort of kick on. And then I've also just started working with FC United Women. So that's sort of a long time, a full-time role. I work with FC United Women part-time. That'll be 2 training sessions in the evening, and they play on Sundays. And that gives me real good coaching exposure to, one, a different sort of population, but also it's a little bit of a blank canvas. So it allows me to kind of implement my own sort of philosophy with the girls and have some real good input there. The other thing that I also do, which I actually started when I got back from Ireland, is I set up my own business. So I have my own private business called Tom Noon Health and Performance. Now, this is stemmed from my personal interest in rehab. So the aim of that business essentially was can I provide a high quality service that is aimed at optimizing human health and performance? So that might be, over time, I've started to develop good relationships with local clinicians and some sports physicians, etc. So I've got a good referring sources now, which are really good. So I'll typically see anyone from general population, someone who's suffering with your chronic lower back pain, someone who might be a little bit overweight, who's got real bad anterior knee pain problems, all the way up to your athlete who might be like an up and coming sprinter who's got a hamstring tendinopathy or anything like that. So I deal with MSK injuries all the way up to sort of your performance based things. Awesome. And yeah, that's sort of me.
And the first thing that springs to mind, I'm sure many coaches are going, wow, there's a lot going on. And being in a full-time role alone, obviously that brings a lot of work in itself. So I think one of the first things to dive into would be time management. So how do you find, because you just mentioned there that the girls train on a Tuesday, am I right saying Tuesday, Thursday evening, play on a Sunday?
No, they actually train Monday, Wednesday, and they play on Sunday.
Monday, Wednesday, play on a Sunday. And then obviously the lads at Port Vale, they're in full time, and then obviously you got your private work as well. So how do you structure that week, and how do you make sure that you're able to fit everything in to start with, but also take time for yourself? Because you mentioned obviously about having a little one. So how does family time factor into that as well?
Good question. A lot of stress. A lot of booking things in on your phone and just trying to sort of do what you can, really. I'm a bit, I don't know if it's OCD, but I don't like to sit still. So I always need to be doing something. So for me, I'm happy to get up, go to work with Port Vale, get home, let's say 4 p.m. and then I'm happy to work all evening with private clients. Like, it's not an issue to me. So I guess from a time management perspective, it's just what's priority. You just need to sort of what's priority on the day. Is it my day where I've got to pick the little one up from school? If so, with that sort of 2 hour gap, I'll just not have to book anyone in. You just have to sort of juggle clients here, there, and everywhere, really. I work weekends as well to try and cater for everybody, so I can really make sure that I fit everybody in. I try not to work Sundays and try and keep that as purely family time. I do see the few select lads that I'm quite close with that just might need the extra session on a Sunday afternoon. But yeah, there's no magic bullet there. I just do what I can. Just keep going. I don't like to sit still, so
no, I know a lot of people will. There's always that constant battle, isn't there, between finding that balance. But it's always just. I think when people hear how much you've got going on and they appreciate that, and it's nice to hear how your week's structured and how you can adapt things as well. But the other side of that is the productivity side, because obviously you don't just want to be working these jobs or working with private clients or working with the girls and sort of ticking along. Obviously you want to be effective as well as a coach. So how do you stay productive? Because having your own business alone, and like you said, I think a really key thing that you said was having, and I can't remember the phrase you used, but having the people feeding into your business. So whether that's different practitioners or physios or whoever it is, you do need those sort of streams of work coming in, don't you? Because obviously a lot of your time is taken up in a full-time environment with Port Vale and the part-time environment with FC United. So how do you stay productive? What are some things you do on making sure that you're staying productive day in, day out?
Well, that's actually part of the reason I took the FC United role, because obviously we're all, as coaches, happy in our sort of comfort zone. So over the years, my comfort zone has been in the gym. I've been a gym person. For some reason, being in the gym has always just sort of come natural to me. And I guess that sort of stemmed into why I'm going down the route of what I've done, is getting into strength conditioning, like most lads, you know. I've just never really struggled in the gym. I found lifting relatively easy, like technique and all those sort of things have just come kind of natural to me. That's kind of fed into me being very comfortable in the gym in terms of coaching. Now, obviously, when you get into sort of athletic performance, we know that gym isn't the be all and end all. That there's a lot of things that we can do as practitioners that can affect our athletes outside. So taking the game changer performance role was a bit of a change for me, because although there's a lot of gym work, there's a lot of effect that we have on the pitch with them as well. Whereas when I was in Ireland with the sports surgery clinic, it was very, very much a clinic, essentially. So I was working in like a high performance gym, and that was it. Taking the FC United role and the Port Vale role, I've done purposely to try and challenge myself. I want to make sure that I'm constantly, I don't like to feel uncomfortable, but let's start to get comfortable in these uncomfortable situations. So I guess that's been something that I've sort of tried to change with my current coaching practices. Can I start to get comfortable with the uncomfortable? Can I get away from the things that I know that I'm happy with, which are my gym work, etc.? And can I take myself into environments where I can start to learn myself and adapt as a coach and as a person as well, and just continually progress and better myself. So taking the FC United role has definitely improved my people skills. Outdoor coaching has started to help me like apply all the bits and bobs that we've got in our head in the field. I don't know. Being productive, I guess, is just try and put myself into new situations, really, and just constantly keep moving forward. That's the way I kind of deal with that.
No, definitely. I think that's a great point in terms of, I think Matt Jones mentioned on the podcast recently about not having a comfort zone, but increasing the size of your comfort zone. So making sure that you expose yourself to different situations like you're talking about there.
Yeah.
But I think practitioners can relate to that a lot, can't they? That they're either very comfortable in the gym or very comfortable on the pitch. And then as soon as you do the other one, it gets a little bit uncomfortable. So I think it's a great point to put yourself in those situations, because then, and this is just my personal view, but this is how I see S&C or physical prep progressing, is that you do need to do both. and you will need to do both. And I'm sure in the roles that you have that you do both anyway,
Yeah.
but you have to be comfortable and effective doing both as well, don't you?
Oh, 100%. I know we're going to get into this a little bit, but my coaching practice definitely changed it's flipped completely on its head. So I always used to be as like a little bit of a younger coach, like everything is gym. We need to do all the gym work, etc., etc. But I know the reason why that was. It's because, like we just said, that was my comfort zone. I know I'm comfortable there. I know my coaching skills there. Like I'm confident with them. And going outside and starting to coach, I don't know, acceleration drills or max velocity drills, or even like your multi-directional movement plans. Just in my experience with those wasn't the best. So obviously, logic says you're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable when you're doing that, which is fine, and I don't think that's a negative thing. There's only one way to get better at something, and that's just go out there and do it. Taking FC United with the girls has been like one of the best things I've done recently, because I just get so much time with them outdoors. They're all individuals, obviously, and each of them moves differently, and it's just good for me just to have that sort of blank canvas, so to speak, and just been able to apply what I like to call sort of your non-negotiables with them, and start to coach these different aspects of physical performance that we know are important. And I've actually now started to value being on the pitch more than in the gym. I've started to, like, on a scale, I've started to go, gym, I think this is where we need to be really maximising what we can give to athletes. Yeah.
And in terms of that role, where are the girls at with their season? Are they in? Because we just spoke about Port Vale before we started recording, but where are they up to? Are they going into pre-season? Is it a similar sort of timescale, and how long have you been with them?
Yeah, so I've been with the girls a month now. So it's very in its infancy, so to speak. They don't actually have a date currently when they're allowed to start the season. It's a little bit frustrating for them. Their first pre-season friendlies have now been allowed to start, and they have the first one this weekend. But yeah, they don't really have a date to work for, which is a little bit annoying. I think it's just to do with obviously money around testing and all those sort of bits and bobs, and how's that going to look. So they're just trialing friendlies at the moment, which are essentially behind closed doors. And yeah, we'll just see how it goes. From my perspective, it's kind of nice in a way, because their S&C history or exposure, it isn't massive, if I'm honest, for them as individuals and as a team. So I kind of like that, because it gives me the ability to just be slow and progressive and make sure we're nailing the basics and getting good with those basics, and just staying consistent and gradually progressing those key elements that we know is important for football, but also for the females as well. And then just making sure they've got that consistent coaching exposure from myself over time. So for me, I'm kind of enjoying it, because it means I don't need to rush with anything. I can take my time, and I can just slowly sprinkle in all the little nuggets that we feel they need, you know.
Yeah, it's making the most of a time that we might not get back, essentially, isn't it? Like, there's not going to be many times where we don't know when pre-season's starting, we don't know when the season's starting. So like you say, it's giving them what they need right now, isn't it? And just adapting to that situation.
Definitely, yeah.
Awesome. Well, in terms of the programming for a female player, now I'd mentioned to you before the podcast that we've got Dawn Scott coming on the podcast, so we're going to really dive into the female game with Dawn, but it'd be great to get your perspective on it, from being in a full-time male environment to going into a part-time female environment. Some of the biggest considerations you've had to make in terms of the programming for either the female player or just the part-time program?
Good question. I guess we'll start with like the part-time program, and then we'll feed into the females. So I guess with a part-time program, this is another reason why I've kind of enjoyed the FC United role, because I actually feel it's made my coaching experience for the team and the individuals better. And it's sort of made, as a coach, and obviously the corona situation has made this happen as well, but it makes you realize, okay, I only have this much time with these athletes. What are the non-negotiables, the ultimate non-negotiables that I feel they should be doing in the 2 sessions that I see them a week? So, bear in mind, we're just doing those warm-ups. So what physical qualities do I think they need that I can make sure I drip feed into them over those 2 sessions. So straight away, you look at your big program and you go, okay, that can go, this is fluff, this is rubbish. Yeah, oh, I like that lunge. Okay, no, it's gone. But unless it's got a sole purpose and it's meeting the key things that I need, I've just started to get rid of all the rubbish essentially, and just narrow down your coaching and just make everything more simple. It's the key thing really. So non-negotiables, what are they? Make sure you know what they are. Your program for me should kind of focus around those. How can we get them into them, and then let's just be consistent with that. Let's get excellent with that, and let's make sure we progressively overload that. And then, as I said, because of the time, I'm quite lucky. But then, obviously, close of the season, then we can add that specificity element. So yeah, it's made it better for me in a way. It's made me realize, okay, I need to just get rid of all this unnecessary accessory work that we might have done or the coaches might be doing, and just really hone in on, okay, what are the essential non-negotiables that I think these girls or boys or whoever we're coaching need to optimize their physical development.
I think we get that question a lot. And I know I mentioned on social media about getting a podcast based around part-time programs, and that alone, I think, is a great bit of advice, because I think people think that they've suddenly got to fit a full-time's worth of work into a part-time program, don't they? Like you said, a lot of the stuff that you probably are able to do in a full-time program, you're not going to be able to do in a part-time program because it's part-time. Exactly, so having that list and being honest and I suppose objective in getting rid of exercises or getting rid of methods is a great point, because I think that's what a lot of people don't do. And then it just turns into sort of ticking boxes, doesn't it? Oh, well, I've done a bit of this, I've done a bit of that, rather than being like, right, what's going to have the biggest effect on our practice right now?
Definitely.
And then what about the, so we said about considerations for the female player as well as the part-time program?
Yeah, sorry. So I guess consideration for the female player, obviously we know there's a few issues. The menstrual cycle, I'm no expert here, and I'm sure Dawn Scott will elaborate on that in a far more detail than me. So I probably will leave that area to her. But we obviously know that has an effect, and that just comes into making sure your communication with the girls is important, and just understanding the individual person. If they come in on a bad day and they're feeling a little bit down, etc., just make sure you're aware of these things. As far as going, how do they differ to the men, and what key considerations have I found that are different, is it's just personality and group dynamics. There's still banter. Like there is with the lads. Like it's not that much different. Just there's a few things around personalities that are a little bit different to the males. I guess from my perspective, again, the key considerations I've had is going back to what we've just said around the non-negotiables and making sure that we're getting rid of the fluff. Is we obviously know that females are highly susceptible to strong knee injuries, such as the anterior cruciate ligament, which we know is bad for a few reasons, but obviously that's going to significantly impact their long-term knee joint health, just generally as a human, which nobody wants that, and nobody wants to potentially go and have a knee replacement when they get older. Okay, so that has to be thought about regardless. And obviously from a performance perspective, they're out for so long, and it's just demoralizing. It's debilitating to them physically, but mentally it's very demoralizing. So the ACL and sort of, I don't want to say can we stop that, because I don't think we can, but what things can I do that can potentially have an impact on minimizing that? So that's definitely one of the key considerations I've taken and I'm still implementing now. We can go into some practical applications of that in a second if you want. And then the other thing is stress fractures. Females are actually quite susceptible to stress fractures. Now, I'm no expert again, but I'm not too sure why that is. I don't know whether that's just to do with general history of exercise and strength training or general strength qualities, but for whatever reason, they seem to be quite susceptible to stress fractures. And as we know, like that can impact how you program for them, because we know there's certain things that we can do to make sure they're getting mechanical loading for the bone, so that it can obviously adapt, so they're not getting that repetitive overuse and ultimately a stress fracture. So they're the two key considerations I've taken. Obviously with the ACLs, I don't want to say it's simple, but from my time in Dublin, I've spent a lot of time around ACL injuries, particularly with males and females. And there's just a few little things that I like to do that are quite simple that you can implement in your warm-ups for those. So we do quite a lot of band work with the girls. That might be something as simple as place a band around your knees. It's like a climb variation, for example. We can get them holding hands. They might sit in like a bit of a squat pattern, as if they're sat up against the wall in like your typical isometric hold against the wall. They each have a band around their knees, and they're just going to externally rotate, hold for a second and come back, etc. And then we know that that's going to give them that sort of recruitment patterns to their external rotator group, so their glute max, but then also their deep sort of external rotating muscles, which we know have a strong implication of how they sort of control their femur and then biomechanically their lower limbs. We do a lot of work on just general hip strength with the bands, because we know that obviously your posterior and lateral hip are going to significantly again impact how you sort of control your limbs during dynamic tasks. So we do a lot of work with the bands and the warm-ups, and then we sort of go through your typical neuromuscular control work that might, your single leg RDLs, loads of hamstring work, making sure those hamstrings are nice and robust is really important, because we know that they play a massive role in limb control as well for ACL. So that's really important. We'll go through just your simple teaching them to accept forces, really accept forces. So your basic hop and stick drills, obviously you can progress them and make them more challenging and dynamic, both in the frontal and sagittal planes. And then just core control, simple drills that can control how they challenge their trunk, and then give them tasks that might make that more demanding through change of direction drills, etc. So yeah, that's it really. But like, at the same time as working on my ACL reduction mechanisms, you're also starting to work other things like your change of direction mechanics, your force acceptance, and your deceleration capabilities, which are all going to be massively important for when they get on the field. So it starts to become like a everything tied into one of what you need. From a bone loading perspective, we can start to incorporate like mild plyometric work, like your classic pogo hops, and start to really low level plyometrics and just overload the bone essentially. I think what's really important is making sure that they start to develop a bit of strength, particularly around the hips and the hamstrings, and then can they produce forces quickly? So it's really important that, for me, I've started to try and incorporate things where they can start to challenge their rate of force development, particularly on one leg, because as soon as they hit that plant stance leg or whatever that may be, if they can't produce forces quickly in that position, we obviously know that we've got we're in a more troublesome position, so to speak. Yeah,
I think that's great information, like for anyone involved, like not just the female side, but all the sort of considerations that you've taken into the program there. I think there's some top information in there. I can sort of hear in my head that coaches want to ask that when you talked about non-negotiables, can you touch on some for the full-time program? I know you spoke about this already, but just you've mentioned non-negotiables a few times. So I think it'd be great to tap into the way you think about the full-time program. What are some of the non-negotiables for the full-time, and then the part-time? And obviously some might cross over, but can you just touch on that for us? Because I think that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. So again, it's even more prevalent now because of what's going on with COVID. We don't know. So I was at the club yesterday and we had a meeting, and we're not actually yet allowed to get in a gym. Potentially allowed in the next few weeks to have 5 people in there and all this sort of stuff. So again, this is why I'm saying this time and working with the girls is actually starting to make my coaching far more effective. To get out all the fluff and what are the key non-negotiables that we need to get in there. So for me, I guess, particularly in a full-time program with the boys, everything they do should be about their football. Okay. So what can I give them that's going to make sure they're performing at their best outside, and obviously minimizing their risk of injury? Obviously, I don't need to go into the needs analysis of football. I'm pretty sure the listeners will know football as a sport, and obviously contextually what's needed there from a physical standpoint. But we obviously know that hamstring injuries are highly prevalent. So that definitely has to be a consideration. Okay. From a sprinting perspective, we know that the game is speed is king. Speed is king. They need to be robust to be able to repeat those high intense sprint actions on a consistent basis, and obviously do that full season, full year round. Obviously, we now know through the strong literature that we've had, we have things such as the Nordic, which obviously gives us that sort of eccentric hamstring strengthening, or the eccentric hamstring overload, and then all the sort of muscle architectural adaptations that we'll get from that, such as your increase in fascicle length and sarcomere series, etc. We know that if I can program something as simple as a Nordic at the end of a session, if you're consistent with that, and we obviously try and progressively overload them, we're going to get significant positive adaptations from minimizing hamstring injuries, but then potentially we might even get some physical performance benefits from speed. Second to that, if I can incorporate some 95% and above, close to, in terms of relation to a percentage of someone's max velocity running, let's just say we do that once weekly for 4 repetitions. I now know, okay, so now I've exposed them to essentially what they need from the game. So they're going to get a massive conditioning stimulus from that for the central nervous system. So it's going to massively affect their performance in a positive way. It's going to provide that potent injury prevention stimulus that we know is important for the hamstrings. And it's just something as simple as doing 3 sprints at the end of your warm-up, making sure that obviously you're considering postural control there and mechanics of the actual runs themselves. So there's 2 simple things, and I've not even got in the gym. I'm just doing some sprints and some Nordics once a week, and already I've cut out loads of fluff and all these bits and bobs that we're doing in the gym, and there's a give or take a robust posterior chain. Okay, so then we can look at football again, and we can go, okay, so we need to be able to sprint and get that sort of extensive activity. So we know our hamstrings need to be robust. Okay, we've ticked that off. Great. What else do we need to know from football? Okay, they need to be intensive in the pressing. So our manager likes to make sure we have that high press, and we know that intensive nature is very mechanically damaging to the muscles, particularly more around the hip and knee. Okay, so now your gym program makes sense, and now we can have something as simple as a Nordic and some sprints. That's kind of taken over those 2 injury problems, or the hamstring injury, but also a massive performance enhancement. Then from making sure that we're robust in that sort of pressing areas where we need to make sure we provide like high eccentric load, braking at speed into new directions, etc. So those accelerations and decelerations. Then we'll go, okay, so how can we give them robustness there? So that might be something, okay. You might start, so what I'm doing with the girls actually is because their history is not as strong with S&C, is something as simple as, let's just do a split squat iso hold on the pitch, either at the end of your warm-up or at the end of their session. Straight away they're getting that sort of, I know it's isometric loading, but they're getting the ability to produce force in their quads and their glutes, and we know that's going to be massively important for attenuating those deceleration loads. And then just being progressive, like I said, just that's the basics. So that exercise would be a basic. Can we then just progressively overload that throughout the year and increase the volume and intensity of what we do? And that's when you can start getting a bit more fancy with your bits and bobs in the gym. But then also something as simple as acceleration, deceleration drills. Let's just do some in the warm-up, some linear runs to a stop, press the mannequin, and then accelerate into a new place, etc., etc. And you're just starting to do all these bits and bobs and these key things that you need, or the non-negotiables, as we've said, and we've not even got in the gym yet, for a few simple bits and bobs. And then, okay, that's what we need. All right, so in the gym, what we need to do then is, if that's what we're going to do, we'll just make sure we have a heavy squat day, and make sure we're teaching the athletes to be able to produce or generate high forces. And then we might pair that with, we might do some contrast loading, just so they're in and out of the gym. We might do that with like a barbell squat jump. okay, now we're training the ability to accelerate nice and quick. And then also let's focus on the landing of that drill. And we're teaching force acceptance or eccentric deceleration rate of force development. I don't know. Do you know? But you can just start to really get rid of all the bits and bobs that they do in the gym and just go, right, you've got 2 exercises, get in, get out, next group, etc. Does that make sense if I just ranted?
No, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be very practical when coaches are listening. They can apply it to what they're doing, because I think, I said it before, I think a lot of people do get caught up in trying to fit too much into a program. And I think what you said with a lot of that is you're doing one thing that covers a number of different rationales behind why you're doing it.
Definitely.
And that's the way we've got to look at it, isn't it? Because and I know I've mentioned a few times that you're in a full-time program and part-time program, but I'm sure you'll admit, even in the full-time program, it would be nice to have more time with the players.
Oh, of course, yeah. It might as well be a part-time program.
Exactly.
You know?
So we have to be effective. And I tied it right back to the start about being productive in your time, but that's how you're productive within your coaching practice as well, isn't it? That you look at one thing that you add into the program and all the different impacts it can have. So I think that was great.
Yeah, I guess if I just elaborate a little bit more as well. So the thought process that I have now is, again, just going into those key non-negotiables. Okay, we need to sprint and we need to press. Just as 2 examples. Okay, if this is football what we're talking about. All those things we can do on the pitch. Like I call it field strength. There's so much we can do on the pitch. This is why my coaching has gone massively more to the pitch. Give them what they need in the gym to be robust for that, but don't worry too much about that. Just give them something where they're going to be able to generate the strength and the capacity to deal with what you do outside. So something as simple as a heavy squat, you can't really go wrong. I know you could argue, and there's a few different bits you might want to throw in there, but if you've got a heavy squat in your program and you're progressively overloading that, go outside and you're then given that so they're generating that capacity in the gym, and then just focus everything outside, because essentially they just want to be outside doing what they do, you know. So
and that was one thing I was going to say on that as well, the psychology of working with a footballer on the pitch, with the culture of football, that the gym isn't the main priority like it is in a lot of other sports, then that can have a big impact as well, can't it?
Definitely, yeah, massively.
And then I think it'd be good to, and I know you've probably touched on this a little bit as well, about your coaching practice and how anything that's developed or anything you've maybe focused on more or changed your mind on recently. So, and I know you've talked about a little bit of it already, but is there anything else that sort of stands out that you've, like say, you've changed your mind on, or you've added into your practice?
Yeah, so we've obviously been lucky, obviously, because of COVID-19. We've had loads of fantastic webinars and podcasts and things to listen to. I'm not sure if you've listened to a few. I'm terrible at remembering stuff, so I can't think of any off the top of my head. But there's been some excellent resources out there, that really has. Free resources as well. So listening to loads of things and dealing with the situation we've had, and then going into this female environment where, like you said, it's part-time and I've only got so much time with them a week, etc., etc. I've just started to value being on the pitch more. Get done in the gym you can get done in the gym in half an hour. Just making sure you're ticking those non-negotiable boxes, like I said, and then let's just get out on the field. So I guess the key things I've started to change is just become more simple in a way, if that makes sense. So simplicity with my coaching, but then making sure that I'm doing those simple things very well, and making sure that those basic simple things we're mastering, and then we're progressively overloading them, and then we're slowly getting that to more specific to the team's needs, but also the individual needs. That's it really. And you start to feel like, I'm definitely no expert, but you start to feel coaching's actually more simple than we make it. Like you said, we always want to throw in all these different bits and bobs, and we need to get 600 different things in because we've got so many physical qualities that we want to address. And I've definitely been there, and I still feel like there's things that I'm missing, etc. But if you just set yourself a set of non-negotiables and say, okay, right, this is my time with these people or this athlete. I've got a set of non-negotiables. That is it. I'm going to get very good at these, and I'm going to progressively overload them. You will tick so many boxes. You'll definitely improve the athlete, no question. So that's it really, just staying simple and getting good at the basics, and just progressing with those.
And I don't
Valuing pitch work as well. I've started to value pitch work a lot more.
Awesome. No, I think that, again, I think that's great. And I was going to ask as well about effective coaching and being an effective coach and being really impactful with your coaching, because again, touching on the time element, that we don't have all the time in the world, whether it's a part-time or a full-time program. So is there anything that you think that you've either added into your practice, or that you do well, or that you've seen other people do well, that make sure that you have a real impact with the girls or the boys or whatever players you're working with?
Yeah, like contextualize everything has to be. So I worked at St George's Park obviously for a good year, and that was such a fantastic place to be. But there, as a physical performance department within the FA, so the FA's physical performance department, they're really open. Well, being around St George's Park anyway, that they've been really open with what they do and the standards they're trying to make, and etc. And they've got things, I don't know if you've seen, but they have they've contextualized things really well to the lads and the girls. So they have something like, they call it sprinting strength, they have braking strength, and then something that they call repeat and recover. So there's their three sort of key physical things that they feel they need to get. So your repeat and recover would be your classic. That's your aerobic capacity. How fit are we essentially, and how well can we constantly repeat the intense actions that we know happen considerably in a game, and can we be fit enough to repeat them constantly? Now, just seeing something as simple as that, it makes it so simple that if the players understand that, straight away they're just going to buy into that those running drills or whatever they're going to do. Then they have braking strength. Okay, I'm not obviously sure behind the scenes how they've sold that to the individuals. I've kind of adapted that to my own. So at Port Vale, we call it pressing strength. And the reason is because the manager's constantly onto them around press, like this is how we want to play, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I've contextualized that to them. Pressing strength, we need to be strong in that press. They know that they get sore from those intensive actions. They've said that to me. So straight away, I'm like, okay, well, we need to be strong to press. So we have 2 days essentially in the gym. One is sprinting strength, which I've definitely adapted and taken from the FA's physical performance sort of benchmarkings. But it makes sense. The boys know they need to sprint. They know that's when they get injured, and they know that's when people pull their hamstrings, but they also want to make sure they're fast. So if I can give them, okay, you've got your sprinting strength exercises now in the gym, straight away they're like, okay, I've got 2 exercises, I need to do it. Do you know, like just that sort of contextualizing and creating this cultured environment where they understand what they're doing, and they start to see that, okay, it makes sense now that I do this in the gym, and that's related to the pitch. Everything has to be related to what they do as a sport. So yeah, I've highly been influenced by the FA. I think that's a fantastic way of promoting our physical performance aspects. And then it's just making sure that you're communicating that as effectively as possible. So do they understand why we do those squats in the gym, or that split squat? Okay, now you know that you're getting sore in your quads and your glutes after a heavy small-sided game. What have we done in that small-sided game? You've done loads of short, sharp accels, decels. You've pressed the hell out of your opposition. Okay, we need to be stronger and robust there, so that when we do that again, we might not be as sore, or we can keep doing that throughout the game and make sure we're potentially got that sort of performance edge on our opponents, or whatever that may be. So yeah, I guess just make sure you create an environment where they understand the context of what you're giving them, and you're not just giving them, a load of rubbish. And then again, this is where coming back to the non-negotiables are, just make it time efficient for them. So you've got 2 exercises, that's your non-negotiables. 2 things, you're in and out in 25 minutes, done. And then they just start to be a lot more happier, and they just get things done. You're happy, they're happy.
I think it's another great point. That language is so key, isn't it? And then also not playing down like the work they've got to do, because obviously it's still important that we're building that robustness like you talked about in the gym. But if we suddenly start referring to like a gym session, they're thinking it's going to be an hour and a half, and they've got all this work to do, then it can be a little bit off-putting, can't it? Like you said, if you refer to it
Definitely.
as your sprint strength, or whatever language you want to use of it, and you've got 2 exercises, then it suddenly becomes a lot more attractive, and they've got the context behind it, like you just said.
Definitely, yeah. I think the other thing as well, which I've started to do, is I've started to become a lot more flexible. So if they don't want a back squat and they want to use a trap bar squat, I'm happy. Or if they want a front squat, or if they want a split squat, or whatever that may be, I'm happy. Again, it's coming back to the adaptation of what you want. The adaptation that we want is we want you to be able to generate high muscular force around the quads and the glutes, for example. Okay, if you're going to do that through one of these four, I don't care. Just get some weight on the bar, make sure it's heavy. Happy days, you know. So I guess just making sure you're really flexible with what you do, and then obviously the one that I've missed out is just making sure that you're using evidence to try and inform your decisions that you do.
Oh, definitely. And I was just checking it because we talked about before everything that we were going to fit into the podcast, and I probably missed out just a couple of things. So we'll just finish up with these. So, and I should have asked this at the start, but in terms of your business and your individual work that you do, what was the reason for focusing more on the rehab side?
Just personal interest. I feel, again, this goes back to what I was saying at the start, being comfortable. I'm very comfortable as a one-to-one coach. It's just something I've always been comfortable with, and it's probably because it stemmed from my personal training environment. I've then gone into a clinic, and just everything's been very one-to-one, and that athlete or individual or patient, whoever they may be, has got my time. And that's, again, that comes back to why I took the FC United and the Port Vale role. I wanted to be out of that comfort zone. But because I'm so comfortable in those environments, and because you've got such time with them, you can really educate that individual. Like, I can have sessions where I might not even give them any prescriptive exercise or anything. It might just be a conversation with someone that comes and sees me who's referred to. Okay, so I might get someone, let's just say, she's referred to me from her doctor. She's had a scan on her knee. She's been told she's got patellar tendinopathy. She's heard this fancy word and she's threatened, like, what is that? She'll come see me and she'll go, okay, Tom, such and such has referred myself to you. Like, how are you going to get me better? I've seen 4 physios, blah, blah, blah. They've done this, and this, you know, all this sort of stuff. And honestly, like, if you just spend time with them and educate them and just give them something as simple as making sure they know why that happens, and telling them it's not the end of the world, and just understanding what they've got and how to fix it, you can get someone better without even doing anything. And I don't know, just that sort of, I just get a real benefit and that this personal pleasure, so to speak, out of just making people better. And I just feel you can have such good input one-to-one, particularly from a rehab perspective. At the end of the day, we all get old and we all get injured. And if that's why my business is health and performance, because I would say 70% of the people I see are just people who are needing to optimize their cardiovascular health through whatever exercise intervention that may be, or, you know, they've got some form of MSK pathology, and my aim is to optimize their joint health, and just having that sort of one-to-one time with them and seeing them progress from where they come, like someone who's got back pain and comes very worried, very scared of moving, very scared of bending and all this sort of stuff, and then you see them deadlifting 60 kg as an example, you know, like 3 weeks later, and they're flabbergasted by, oh my god, I can't believe this. And it's just really pleasing, I would say. And I just feel, in essence, as a family man, like, I'm not too sure if I'm going to stick within the sporting realm forever. So it's more of a younger person's role, so to speak. So I need a plan B. So if I can start to build a business now that gives me a full-time career in 5-10 years, with something that I'm passionate about and I enjoy, then it's a no-brainer. So I guess, yeah, my 5 to 10 year plan is to open up my own sort of rehab clinic. That's what I want to do, but we'll see.
And you must have read my mind there, because the other thing that we did miss out on is the multiple income streams. And I know loads of coaches have spoke about this, and you see more and more people setting up businesses and having other things going on in the background, as well as being full-time at a club. And I fully agree with you that it's tough, isn't it? Like when you've got a family and you're expected to, no jobs are secure, unfortunately. Like, no managers' jobs are secure, so definitely no staff's jobs are secure. You do have to have that plan B. So was that always the plan for you? Did you always want that, or is that just something that you feel like you said before about your personality, that you've always got to be busy? Do you think that's been formed from that, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I've definitely always got to be busy, so that's definitely formed part of that. But I guess when I went over to Dublin, I started to see. So, like I just said, I'd see someone who would say to me, "Tom, I've seen 6 physiotherapists. How are you going to get me better?" Not discrediting or like being any negative toward physios. There's a lot of good physios out there, but there's a lot of physios that, we're going back to this non-negotiable scenario now, that beat around the bush. They don't get straight down to the nitty gritty of solving that problem. And I feel like it's because they're taught to be, I need to watch what I say, so I'm not going to say too much, but as opposed to, for example, okay, you're getting knee pain. There's the diagnosis here. I need to treat this diagnosis. No, let's understand why you're getting that problem and get you out of that, and then slowly get you into more normal movement patterns and just get you better. So the business stemmed from that. I wanted to bring that mindset of that I've been drilled and learned in Ireland back to the UK, where I provide a high quality, no rubbish rehab service, essentially using the skills that I developed over in Ireland. And I'm just massively passionate about it, and it just generated from that. So yeah, that's why.
No, I think that's a great point. And again, like creating something out of a passion like that, I think is really important, because it becomes sustainable, doesn't it? And it's not to say that there isn't battles and tough times when you've got your own business and you're working something that is your passion, because it definitely is. Yeah. Anyone who doesn't believe that is a bit of a fool, but it makes things a bit easier, doesn't it, to sort of cope with and work at and create something out of.
100%, yeah. You've got to have that passion. You need to enjoy what you do. I don't not enjoy going to Sport Vale every day. I definitely do enjoy it. Like, if you're involved in football and you're a football person, which I am, like, it's definitely enjoyable. But like you say, I'm not too sure how long that will last. No one knows what security is not there. And essentially, I just don't think that's a job that you can be in for forever. So can I start to build this business now where I can just be this rehab professional, so to speak, that people know in the local community within where I live in Manchester as, okay, he's a really cool person to go and see. He knows what he's doing. He'll get me better. That was my aim.
Awesome.
And just generally promote general. I'm massive on promoting just general health as well. Just exercise and just generally moving and that sort of thing. And if I could be a person that people come to just for general structured help around improving their physical or mental health through exercise, then again, that's a passion of mine, and I'd love to do that as a job.
I think that's great. Again, I think there's been loads of great content in this one. Like we've touched on, I think we've got through everything that we said that we were going to get through, and a lot of it has crossed over. So I think it's gone quite nicely and flowed quite nicely. But if there's anyone that wants to get in touch, maybe ask questions on some of the things that you've talked about, possibly even tap into your way of thinking about setting up a business, or even reaching out if someone wants to work with you in terms of any one-to-one work, have you got any? Can you direct them to the right place?
Yeah, so probably the most thing that I'm active on is Instagram. So my business is called Tom Noon Health and Performance. So my Instagram is simply tn.health and performance. So at tn.health and performance. I am on Twitter as well. That was made quite a while ago. So that's just simply at TomNoon89. So that's my date of birth, at TomNoon89. And that's it really. They're the main two.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you giving up your time there, mate. I think there's loads of good content in this one. So yeah, thank you for coming on.
No problem. Cheers for that, Ben.
And we'll stay in touch. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Good man. Cheers.
Take care, mate.
Take care, mate.